And with that, we are recording episode 114 of the Blown Smoke Podcast. I'm Jake. You are?
I'm Eric.
And you are?
Somebody.
Joe. That is Joe. 6B Joe on Instagram. If you'd like his address, we can now give that out as well.
Exactly.
Let's not.
Let's not and say we did. So welcome everybody to the show about three best friends talking about cars, life, and whatever else we can come up with, mostly cars. How are you fellers doing on this fine, wintry, cold, miserable, mind-warpingly, numbingly, miserably cold day?
Wow. That was a lot of miserable going on there.
Yup.
No. I'm actually doing great because I don't have to shovel my road this time.
Why not?
Because we didn't get as much as I said we were going to.
It's like that happens every single time it snows.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, no, that's not true. A couple months ago, they said that we were only going to get about 8 to 10 inches, and I measured out at my house 15.2 inches of snow.
Sorry if anyone had to hear that. I'm moving my
And
microphone.
I had to hand shovel most of it out of 3 roads to get my car out because it was buried.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
You know, I don't really know the details of climate change, and I'm not smart enough to learn. But I keep hearing people refer to global warming as climate change, and I think I can get my head around climate change a lot easier because it's just been really miserable and cold. So if the planet is heating up, we're not getting it.
Yeah, we're not getting part of that.
Yeah, like climate change I can see. I'm on board for that. But the global warming thing, I'm like, I don't know. Is it though?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends on which meteorologist or Al Gore impersonator you ask.
Yeah. You know, I'm pretty sure he drives like some really like expensive gas hogging car. I thought he did. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe he drives a Tesla now.
He could. I don't know. I've never even remotely thought of Al Gore outside of what we just said. So I don't know.
I think he drives a Tesla, but he has a yacht. So.
Oh, okay. So he makes up for it with the yacht mileage or gallons to mile.
Yes.
Yacht mileage.
Yacht mileage.
Yacht
That's one
mileage.
thing that's really impressive about boat owners, and I'm sure you two know this, but people that own boats, the fuel cost of your typical, I don't know, center, whatever they call it, the center thing where the wheel's in the center and it's a big fishing boat. I don't even know what the term is, but you know what I'm talking about, where like the command center, the controls are all in the center of the boat.
Just a regular fishing boat?
Yeah.
Like a bass boat?
Something like
Okay.
that. Like the fuel cost of a boat is insane. And people are like, oh, I'm running twin V8s. I've got dual,
Yeah.
150 gallon tanks. I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, they
Even
don't-
at $2 a gallon, that's like a $600 day on the lake.
Right?
No, I knew a guy in Detroit who had a one of those cigar boats. What do they call them? Those like a Baja Outlaw.
Cigarette boat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had a Baja Outlaw, and it was
Oh, Jesus.
he had 3 Mercury 525s.
Wow.
And he would spend $1,200 a day
That's crazy. Well, the day that we were
on
out.
fuel.
Sorry, Joe.
It's okay.
The day that we were out with Tim, like when we went out to the lake a year and a half ago with him,
Uh-huh.
we had to go get fuel, and we weren't even out that long. Like running time, we weren't even out that long.
Yeah, and we were running little bitty motors on a pontoon boat. So
Right.
that's probably next to like a legit fishing boat, like a river boat. That's
Yeah.
probably as cheap as you can do time on the water.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just depends on like where you're at and everything too. Because if you're
Yeah.
going, could you imagine being those dudes that are going upstream, like in the Missouri River or something?
That's just, it's a level, it's like, it's one thing to like buy the boat and have this huge toy, especially in the state that we live in. It's not like
Yeah.
Florida where you can go out every weekend guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly.
You've probably got, just like a motorcycle, you've probably got a 6 to 8 month gap where you can actually use the thing. And when you start to like really like pay attention to all the costs of owning a boat, I'm like, holy crap. Like you really got to want
Right.
to own a boat.
Yeah, it sounds great, but I don't want to pay for
It makes
one.
drag racing look cheap.
Yeah, it really does.
So what are we going to talk about now that we've established that none of us are going to buy boats anytime soon?
Yeah, no, not really at all. I have a lot better shit I can spend my money on, especially
Absolutely.
because they're expensive too.
Whoa.
Like $20,000 gets you a bass boat, basically a 22-foot long bass boat.
But don't boats depreciate like really fast, just like RV? Like if you ever want to buy an RV, which I don't condone because I think RVs are terrible,
right?
you can pick one of those up used for like
Dirt cheap.
Nothing.
Yeah.
pennies. Like the cheapest 5-year-old or the most expensive 5-year-old RV in the world has still depreciated like 60% from new.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like motorhomes that
Dude.
people spend $75,000 on.
100,000,
Yeah.
200,000.
500,000. It just goes up. From
There's
there.
a guy, there's this really fascinating YouTube channel that I watch, and it's all about this rich real estate developer in Florida. and I forget his name, but he's like this big guy, and he smokes all the time, and he's kind of like what you would think of as like a typical like rich Florida guy, gold chains, the whole 9 yards. He bought a Kenworth RV, so it's like a motorhome based on a big rig. And in this episode where he buys it, you go through the whole sales process, and he test drives it, blah blah blah. The person that built this thing, and it was like a 2012 or 2013 like luxury liner, so it's big. It's a big deal. Spent like 1.3 million dollars building this thing, and putting bathrooms on it, and putting a bedroom on it, and plasma TVs and all this crap.
I believe
and
it.
like 6 years later, this rich guy, buys it for $125,000.
Yeah.
It's like over $1 million in depreciation.
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
That's why I don't buy RVs. That and I hate them.
That's like a greatly enhanced version of what we were talking about with choppers a couple weeks ago, or like a month ago now. How like you could spend $120,000 on one, and 10 years later they're $7,900. You can go buy an old $100,000 build for.
Can I ask you a favor? Can you lean over to the camera screen real quick and make sure that I'm not too far to the right?
Si, senor.
If you don't know, if you're listening to this, you can actually catch all of our episodes on YouTube now. If for some reason, can you catch me on the camera? Am I on the right side there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. You can catch all the episodes of the Blown Smoke podcast on our YouTube channel, which is so small, it's actually kind of hard to find. So if you can't find it by searching the Blown Smoke podcast on YouTube, you can always DM us for the link. We're happy to send it.
Exactly.
And that's not something that I don't know what your guys' opinions on it are. I never thought that people would want to watch a podcast. Like, that to me was just like, why? But then you look at the numbers and like the bigger podcasts, you're like, holy crap.
Well, you look at like Joe Rogan and stuff, and
Yeah.
everybody and their sister watches. It's like it's like reality TV almost. People really want to watch and tune in and see who people have on as guests and everything now too.
I guess. And I think the episodes where we do have a guest on will probably be more popular for that.
Well, yeah.
But I was just like, all right, if you guys want it, we'll do it. Whatever.
Oh, exactly. But it'll work out great. I really like the fact that we have a YouTube channel just for that purpose. Like, you can actually instead of us just blabbing at one another and you can't ever actually see the people, you can actually see us, having conversation and everything.
Hi.
Hey.
You also have to figure that Joe Rogan's a very animated speaker.
Yeah.
So
Seeing
people
his
like to watch
expressions.
his expressions, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's probably one reason why it's successful for him.
And I think for some people too, like, this is something that you wouldn't think a lot of people do. A lot of people, I guess, will just turn on, because everyone has a smart TV now.
Yeah.
People will
Except me.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
They're not all they're cracked up to be, but people will turn on a podcast on their TV while they're doing something else in the house, and essentially use the podcast or use YouTube as a radio, which nobody cares about any of this, so I don't know why we're talking about it.
Well, it's because we're just, babbling.
Yeah. So on to some news. I know you wrote some things down because you are the host of this show that actually prepares and tries.
Somewhat, yeah.
Real quick, if you guys don't care, I did drive it was a 2019 Ranger.
Ooh, I want to hear about
And
this.
I was going to give you my quick cliff notes. I promise this won't be a
go,
20
go,
minute.
go,
I don't
go.
care.
Okay.
I want to hear about it because
Joe doesn't give a crap. He's already decided.
Well, that's fine. But
No, I'll listen to it.
we completely...
Because you're in the room.
We destroyed that thing a couple weeks ago.
We did.
We did. So I want to
did.
hear what you have to say about it.
We did. Excuse me. 2019 Ranger, I think we all kind of know where they're trying to get. It's not as unique as the Gladiator, so I would almost argue that people are not going to cross-shop the two. I think if you're going to buy a Gladiator, you're probably a different consumer than the person who buys the Ranger.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go. No.
My question is, they're still going to do a Raptor-style Ranger.
Not in the U.S.
No?
Nope.
Okay, because that would be the only thing I could
That
think
would
would
be
go
it.
with the Gladiator.
Yeah.
But
That would be it.
There's rumors of yes and no, but nobody...
Ford officially confirmed.
Really?
Nope. They said
I don't
no.
know. That's a missed opportunity.
I
I think they could really get something.
They didn't
I
want to.
doubt it.
They didn't want to cannibalize the F-150.
You're not going to. It's
I
a
agree,
totally
but that's not
different
what Ford
truck.
thinks.
So really, if you're looking at, not to derail your
No.
comment, but so you've got Tacoma TRD Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You've got the Colorado
ZR2
That's what I said.
and the Bison.
And by the way, Bison, that's not a good name. I don't know why they did.
Bring your microphone just a bit closer.
Anyway, you've got those two, the Gladiator. What other small pickup?
You still have the Frontier that's like 13
But I'm
years
saying
old.
off-road. That's off-road enhanced.
You shouldn't even mention that truck on
Yeah,
the show.
don't ever.
You're right. I'm sorry. I did a bad thing.
Yeah. I'm just wondering are there any other small? I mean, if you wanted a factory off-road enhanced vehicle,
No.
it's the Colorado.
Colorado,
The
Tacoma,
Tacoma or the
Gladiator.
Gladiator.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, go ahead then.
No, you're good. What's interesting about it, I'll say the good things because I did like certain things about it. Ford did a really good job in the 2019 Ranger of making the truck feel like a truck. I've also driven early generation Colorados, like the mid 2000s Colorados and Canyons, and those really they feel like cars that are in the shape of a truck. They don't make you feel like you're driving a truck. The seating position and the high belt line in the Ranger and kind of you get this kind of bird's nest view of everything in the Ranger. It feels taller than it really is. So the Ford did a great job in the 2019 Ranger of making you feel like you're driving a truck, even though you're driving something that's roughly the size of maybe a Fusion or an Edge. It's not that big. So bonus points for that. It drives like a truck in a really good way.
Okay.
It also drives like a car in the ways that you would want it to. It's very smooth. It rides well. It doesn't feel like it's, oversprung without anything in the bed. I mean,
Probably because it's a unibody.
I thought it was body on frame, but I would totally believe it if you told me it was unibody.
I think them and Colorado Canyon are unibody, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I know Gladiator's body on frame. I know that for sure.
Yeah, and Tacoma's body on frame too.
Yeah.
Bonus points for them kind of packaging this truck this truck feeling into something that rides like a car. Now I was driving an XLT, which is next to the lowest package, so this was essentially a no frills one. It was a crew cab. It had the I'm assuming the EcoBoost 4-cylinder, the 2.7, 2.7 is the standard base engine. That's what this had. The only thing that I noticed, my only two real gripes about it, and to keep this review short, was one, it felt like the powertrain wasn't quite properly connected. I kind of told you there's a little bit of partial throttle powertrain shuddering, like you just get a little bit of vibration in the pedal.
Oh, that's weird.
Which for a base level, entry level truck, maybe that's just part of the deal. Maybe you don't get Cadillac smooth. But for a brand new truck, I was kind of like, maybe that doesn't, I don't know. It didn't feel fully bolted down powertrain wise. But when you were on the throttle, the power delivery was great. It was very smooth. So that was my first kind of about it. And then the second, and this is probably to blame on their target market, like they're not going after people. Yeah. The same people that are going to buy a TRD Pro Tacoma or a Gladiator are not cross shopping the Ranger. I don't think that's going to happen. Now I think people that would cross shop the Colorado will absolutely cross shop the Ranger. Mm-hmm. But if you're the type of person who wants the ZR2 Colorado, you're probably a little outside of the Ranger, because the Ranger, and this is my other kind of secondary beef with it, it's just very dull. It's a very mundane.
Was it just too underwhelming?
It just stylistically, it just doesn't. It has nothing about it that's like, oh wow, I really like that. It's just, and that's probably their purpose. They just want the guy who's in his mid 30s, mid 40s, 50s, who just wants a mid-sized truck that runs well, that he can do things.
It's very similar probably to the original point of the Colorado Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the S10 and the Ranger of yesteryear, I suppose.
Well, plus, I mean, not everybody wants to spend $65,000 on a new truck, and that's the next best thing that you can get.
So you spend $40,000 on half the truck.
Yeah, with half the capabilities and everything else.
Well, yeah, but I guess to be fair, most people don't use their half-ton truck for half the stuff that it could really do.
I don't think anybody really does anymore.
I don't. I mean, I'm the first one to say that I never come close to towing the max capacity of my Ram.
Yeah.
Now, hauling maybe. Haul, gravel and stuff that's really heavy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But nowadays the capacities are so high that it's tough to reach them all the time. Yeah. But anyway, I was just going to say something and now I forget.
I would say, I guess to summarize, if you're the type of person who just wants a truck to be a truck, and you're looking at the new F-150 and you're like, man, I don't want to spend $40,000 or $45,000 on a base level truck.
Yeah.
The Ford Ranger is an awesome option. If you're a Ford guy and that you're going to buy a Ford one way or another, I don't think there's anything about it that should detract anyone from buying it. I think they did their homework. They built it well. I mean, it's a big nameplate, so they're not going to mess it up. But if you want something that's interesting and cool and different, and blah blah, make your case for customizing it after the fact. It's just kind of a they don't want it to be exciting, and you can kind of tell.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So how many Colorado or how many Ranger Raptor builds are you going to see at SEMA this year then?
Oh, there were all of them last year.
Yeah, there was
that's
a
what they
row.
all
They
were.
already were.
They were all
Yeah.
That's why I was so excited
Fox
to
Ra-
drive
like
this
the racing
one.
shops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were all the ones last year were on 35s already.
Yeah,
So
at minimum 35 6-inch lift. They were all on Fox Racing shocks
Mm-hmm.
or BDS suspension or Bilstein or whatever. Throw a suspension company out there and you had it out there.
Yep.
And they all did their best to kind of, I guess, render what the Ranger should be.
I'm
Which is
wondering.
The Ranger Raptor, I should say, what
Go
that
ahead.
should be.
I'm wondering, is that a 6-speed auto in those now, or they're not putting the 10-speed in there? Surely.
I didn't pay attention.
I think it's a 6-speed.
I think it's still that 6-speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What I do appreciate, I will say this about that truck, is unlike a lot of trucks, they didn't try to over bulkicize it, and we've seen that a lot less in the past few years. But
Oh, okay.
they didn't try to over compensate for the fact that it's a small truck. They just kind of made it a good mid-sized small truck. That's it.
Yeah.
Simple. So that's
Cool.
it. Ranger, if you want one, go buy one. My review is probably not going to sway anyone's opinion either way. So
No, that's. I like your reviews though. They don't really, completely diss a vehicle. They find kind of the advantage and disadvantages of it. So,
Nice.
if you're in the market for one of those, 20 to 30 grand, go get one.
go get one.
There you
And
go.
I talked to the owner, who's a very nice guy. Apparently, you can pick those up for under sticker already because there's so many of them.
Yeah, they're making them like hotcakes right now. That plant is going crazy.
They're probably trying to get them out before the Gladiator really drops.
Yeah, I would be too. I'd be
Not that I
trying to
think
get
people
rid
do
of
cross
every
shop.
Colorado, Tacoma, everything before the Gladiator drops.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Gladiator is gonna sell out in the first 2 days they're on sale.
Yeah. I
For
hate
the
to.
first year. The first year will be sold out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can only make so many in the first model year when you haven't even released this model year and you're already into March.
Yeah.
So you're gonna sell out quick.
I hate to admit it, but if I was about to drop 50 grand on a mid-sized truck and I knew that I could either have the Tacoma, which is, I love it, but it's so dated,
Yeah.
or a Gladiator, the JL drives really well.
There's no, in my own book, there's no, I would get a Gladiator. If you handed me $50,000 and you handed in
ZR2 Duramax or Gladiator?
Gladiator, there's no,
Really?
yeah.
What?
Really?
I absolutely love the looks of
Never
that thing.
guessed.
And it also has, the powertrains are there. Like, I don't know any negative thing you can say about it, but I haven't driven one yet. But I've seen the interior, I've seen the exterior.
Okay.
I'm
Hey.
completely sold. I absolutely loved the old Jeep pickup trucks.
I'm with you.
And-
I'm surprised to hear.
I
Yeah.
do think it'll be cooler once they get the 3.0 Eco Diesel in it.
Yeah.
Because that 3.6 is a good platform, but still.
It's a
Come
little
on.
heavy for that. When they get the diesel in there, that'll be really cool too.
Yeah, and I think it'll ride even better than a JL Wrangler because it's a longer wheelbase for one,
That's
Yeah.
true.
and it's built more like the Ram
Mm-hmm.
is. Not really, but I mean it's built. The box frame is kind of mimicked from the Ram, but it's taken from the JL and stretched.
That's a long vehicle.
Yeah,
you and
it
I
is.
noticed that at the auto show. That is a
Yeah.
long truck.
Well, they wanted a full 5-foot bed,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so
That's the other thing I like about it too is it's got all the capabilities of a much larger truck in a little bit smaller package.
Yeah.
And it's a friggin' Jeep.
I do appreciate the fact. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
I do appreciate the fact that they didn't make it a Wrangler, like a barely truck. Like we've seen that before, where they turn something into an air quotes truck, and it's
Ford
not.
Explorer Sport Track.
Thank you, Cadillac. I love them to death. The EXT,
XT.
the Avalanche, like
Yes.
they were trucks, but like
Kind of trucks.
Kind of.
It
And the
was-
Gladiators, in my opinion, it's a truck.
They were just
Truck.
they were very confused trucks. We'll
What
just put
they
it that
did
way.
is they did it the right way. They started with a JL, and basically from the B pillar back, they cut it in half, and they got rid of the back part and started fresh.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
So you really have familiarity in the front, but you have all new in the back. And the fact that the top is removable
Yeah.
is going to appeal to a lot of people that aren't brand loyal.
yep.
So if you're not brand loyal, then you'll easily go into a Jeep just because if you want the top removed feature, if you want a removable top.
Totally.
But if you want a Colorado, you're going to get a Colorado.
Well,
If
exactly.
you want a Ranger, you'll get a Ranger.
But I just like the fact that the Jeep is so much more luxurious than the rest of the competition.
They look good. Yeah,
Like, and there's to me, there's no bad feature about it either. With the
Yeah.
Colorado, I can pick 2 or 3 things that I don't really care for about that truck and the way that it's styled.
Yeah.
With the Jeep, I have 0 complaints, but I also was a huge fan of the old of the old military trucks that they used to make and the Comanches. I absolutely love those things. Even though the Comanche was like the 4-liter straight six and it was a lot smaller package, but
Yeah.
if you would have handed me, it would have been the same situation. If I could have chosen a Ranger S10 or a Comanche, it would have been a Comanche.
Yeah.
Hands down.
I think next year at SEMA, it's just like this year. If you got to go to SEMA, this year was JL Fest.
Yeah.
Literally every vehicle there seemed like it was a JL.
JL or
Next
a road
year's
truck,
going to be
yeah.
the Gladiator show.
JT.
Yeah.
JT Fest. That's
Yeah.
the code name for it. JL,
Okay.
JT is the Wrangler truck.
Oh,
It's
good to know.
Gladiator.
I learned something.
Just so you know.
So what,
So-
Eric? What have you written down here?
We promised. Well, first off, I promised that I would do this on our Instagram, and I shouted out a gal named Haley Deegan on our Instagram page on Friday.
did.
And it's because she won the opener for the K&N West Pro Series in NASCAR in Las Vegas. She actually just completely drove through, well, quote unquote, drove through somebody to win the race, which was awesome. And that's also a dirt track, so they were sideways sliding into one another. And she passed this guy with a lap to go and ended up winning the race. So it's her second career win in the K&N Series, and she's an upcoming driver that is very talented and very good. She reminds me of more of a Ashley or Courtney Force for NASCAR.
You go, girl.
And no, she's just a badass. The girl can flat out drive. Like, she's everything that I had hoped for with Danica. Because I think NASCAR does need a good female driver to draw a little bit more into the fan base.
Yeah.
And to just get some excitement for, you know, it's been 40 guys running around in circles for 65 years. It'd be nice to say, hey, a girl just got a top 5 this week every now and then. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah.
no, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to her because, no, that's badass. She won on a lot on that. I can't talk. She won at Las Vegas, the dirt track outside the Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Okay.
And I just think that's cool.
Hey, you
She's
go,
going to
girl.
run a couple truck races this year, and there's rumors that she's going to run a couple Xfinity series, so the you know AA series basically for NASCAR this year too. So
That's cool.
I'm
Oh,
pumped.
cool.
It does seem like
Yeah.
with NASCAR coming from the outside, it does seem like they really do stay true to the "you don't get in unless you're good enough" type thing. And I could be completely wrong. I mean, you know, they might bring people in that don't deserve to be in, but from my outside perspective, it's always seemed like they have the same barrier to entry, regardless of age, gender, race, anything. It's
Yeah.
all
You got to be
very
able to
difficult.
wheel. There's no doubt about it. Now, you can argue that with a couple drivers, along with the Danica and a couple other things, but for the most part, no, you're 100% right. And the
Yeah.
other cool thing that she is she's the daughter of Brian Deegan. Now, Brian Deegan is the famous X Games guy.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
his daughter, and she's I think
Oh,
from what I read, I think she's 17. I don't know.
got it.
Try
Yeah.
not to be too. I'm not trying to creep
Okay.
on anybody, but she's 17. She's a great driver, and it's really good for the sport.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
Brian Deegan is. He's Metal Militia from back in the day, man. He's like
Yeah.
famous for having broken every bone, and if he's the guy I'm thinking of, he's broken like every bone in his body. He's missing half his organs. Like he has left half of his body in the sport of freestyle motocross.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
that guy.
If you've ever spent it, can I just say this? If you've ever spent any time around a big bike, like a 250cc and up motorcycle, like dirt bike, you realize how freaking psychotic it is that those freestyle riders throw those things around 80 feet in the air. You're just like,
Why?
what are you doing?
I always wonder how too. Like
Yeah.
whenever Travis Pastrana, I'll never forget this. Travis Pastrana was one of the first guys to do the double backflip. And
Yeah.
whenever he did the first backflip, my mind got blown. Whenever he did the double backflip, I was like, "What the shit? How do you even do that?" Like,
Yeah.
you just shouldn't be able to do that. The bike weighs what 400 or 500 pounds, something like that. And
Motorcycles scare me more than street bikes.
yeah.
Easily.
Now they're doing front flip 3. Now they're just doing all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah.
Backflip 360s, front flip 180s, just all kinds of stuff.
Isn't it Monster Jam in St. Louis this weekend? Did we miss that again?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Monster Jam, the company, owns every truck besides Max D, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah.
it's all, to me, it's turning into kind of like wrestling. It's more entertainment than it is anything else, like a competition.
Yeah. See, to me, and that fact right there, that makes it completely uninteresting to me.
Yeah.
Instantly, I don't care. Like if one governing body owns all the trucks, I don't care.
Yeah.
No interest. No, thank you.
I don't know. Whenever Tom Ince and Dennis Anderson and all those guys were racing and doing stuff, 5-10 years ago, I was really interested. My family went almost every year for a while, and
Yeah.
to the Dome here in St. Louis, and it was awesome because it was a lot more. It felt more competitive and free spirited, and more than what it is now. Now it's like a show, a real show. It's
Yeah.
more entertainment, and it's more. I'd say it's more WWE like than anything else because wrestling is all show. And yes, the impacts and the shit that they go through are real, but still it's show. It's made up, it's scripted, and everything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna piss a lot of people off. If any of our fans are wrestling fans,
Dude, I love wrestling.
I got no issues with it. Like what you like. It's just to
But-
me, it is like it's so bizarre that there are so many grown men. And again, do what you want. I don't care. It's just so interesting that there's like so millions of grown men that like will knowingly watch a group of oily, half-naked guys in spandex, which again I don't care, do a scripted performance in a wrestling ring. And like, again, it's just I'm not judging. It's just interesting. It's like no other sport air
Dude,
quotes,
it's
no
like-
other thing could get away with this.
It's like lumberjack ballet is all it is.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
It's like I don't know. There's nothing to compare it to. It's bizarre. To
It's
me.
its own thing.
It is.
But it's cool.
bizarre.
I was into it for a real long time. So, like, really, really into it for a real long time.
I will say this: all the people that I know that are into wrestling, like they're just aware of how silly it is, and they enjoy it. And like,
Yeah,
again, do you?
exactly. So we also said last week that we were going to answer people's questions, and
We did.
we had a couple. I don't think we've gotten anything yet for this week, but
Probably
there was
not.
a few that a shout out and a couple questions that we missed from last week. And one of them was my buddy Chris Gersman, who I used to work with at the company that we worked at. I don't want to say what it is, but he wanted us to shout out them Duke boys, so the Dukes of Hazzard show. So it confuses me so much when you do that.
Sorry.
He's messing with his phone while we're on the air, and it's just,
Well, we have 9 comments on the video that we just posted, so I'm trying.
Really?
I'm trying to get to them. And if you don't know, if you've never managed a Facebook page, they make it really difficult to read Facebook comments on a live video.
yes, they do.
Very frustrating.
Especially when it's yours.
Yes.
It's easier for everybody else to read it than it is for you to answer anything on it.
Yes.
So,
they punish you.
yes. So for Chris, shout out, Dukes of Hazzard. Woo! Dixie horn. I don't want to make the noise.
Yeehaw.
Yeah, pretty much. So is there anything on there that you want to...
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
We'll let Joe respond to this first one, even though he already did on Facebook. Greg B., our frequent guest and resident car audio expert,
Yes.
wanted us to tell
Joey.
to park his cars correctly. Joe bought a house this past weekend and
Yep.
has parked all of his many Mopars at it. And Greg would like us to pass on to you, as you well know, that you did not park them correctly in the picture that you posted. Do you have any retort?
Nothing that I should probably say on the air.
Okay, I'll say it for you. Fuck off, Greg. Because Joe's too nice. We
The
love
only
you.
thing I can say is that they're parked that way because if you want to get out of the car without hitting the wall, you got to park them a certain way. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
We have
That's
a few
fair.
questions here. I'm just going to read them off, and I'll softball them to you guys.
Go.
Travis Understall, good friend of ours, listener of the show. Hey, Travis, you're a good man.
Yes, he is.
When do I get to be on the show? And I'm sure it's been asked, but so we'll answer this first part. When do I get to be on the show?
Whenever you send us a DM, brother.
We'll DM you after the show.
Yeah,
How about that?
that's it.
Yeah, we have an official podcast calendar.
Yep.
We will put your name on it.
So that's done.
That's okay. That's part one of his question. Part two. What is our pick for old school muscle cars if we were buying them?
Ooh.
That might take a minute.
Okay,
well let's
we
let that marinade.
Can we swing around to me because I can't answer that off the top of my head.
Okay. This next one comes from our good friend Nick Cooper, who will be on the show this coming Saturday. Nick's a really interesting guy. We like him a lot.
Awesome.
Nick wants to know, and I love the fact that people are sending us these type of questions, so please
Right.
keep it up. What's the proper way to cook a steak?
Just don't cook it well done.
Joe?
That's terrorist food. You can't handle that kind of crap.
Okay, so cooking it well done is terrorist food. You heard it here first. Any thoughts on steak cooking?
Medium well. That's what
Charcoal only. Also, if
Yes.
you cook with that is just terror food, and I do not like it as much.
Okay, my answer to that, Travis, is let your wife do it. That's always been my
Let your
solution.
wife do it.
It's always been my solution because she's a way better cook. All
No,
right.
I love barbecue.
Greg wanted us to say, never ever let Joe forget that he's parking incorrectly. We got you, Greg. Love you, buddy.
Holy crap! He's not going to let that go,
He
is
is
he?
not going to let that go.
No, he's not. We know.
That's okay.
We know. This
Don't be
about
jelly.
Greg.
Get your own 3-car garage, and you can do whatever the hell you want.
Fair enough. All right.
Just to make that clear, I did not say that.
Nick has another question. He said, "Do you feel like the higher price for newer vehicles is justified because they're safer?"
Because not only because they're safer. They offer more and more now than you ever had. Ever. I mean,
100%.
the features, convenience, all the crap that people want in them, that has a cost.
I would say with a few exceptions, because I think manufacturers have made vehicles safer, and that's a good thing. But I will say that as far as why people actually buy them, I would almost argue that safety has remarkably less to do with most people's choices in cars than we would like to think.
Than like 10 years ago, whenever they were kind of having wars about that.
If you look at the cars that do pretty terrible on the crash ratings, there's a lot of them. Like, I'm pretty sure the new Mustang is pretty awful as far as like safety and I could be wrong, so check that on your own. But I would just say that they, kind of like Joey said, manufacturers cars are more expensive, as we found out from your mathematic equation a few months ago.
Right.
Not always as much more than you would think if you adjust for inflation, but I would answer that by saying that yes, they are safer, and I do think that helps to justify it. But I think for most of us, the reason that we're okay spending more on new cars is for the creature comforts, for the
technology,
the technology, the combination of power and efficiency,
exactly,
of room and
they have all the things now.
Miles per gallon. So I would say that's probably part of it, but I wouldn't say that that's necessarily why we're buying them.
Yeah, and
there are a lot of people that look at the top safety picks, and that they do base their purchases on that.
Yeah, like off Consumer Reports and.
Yeah, and I have to say that if you're going to base it on that, then that's why people buy Subarus and some of the Toyota Camry,
Volvo.
I think. Volvo, yeah, especially Volvo. I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying a car because it's consistently rated the safest car ever tested. I mean, Tesla, if you have the money. But Volvo specifically. But you also have to think that the most mediocre safe car right now is probably better than the safest car was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Safe is a relative term.
Yeah.
You have to adjust your perspective on that. So if you have a 10-year-old car now, I bet any car you buy new now would be more safe than that one, even if 10 years ago it was the safest car.
Yeah, and there's
So
outliers like
keep that in mind.
Yeah, and there's outliers I'm sure like Volvo station wagons.
Yeah.
Like, there's just
there's cars that we know
there's just things that are
Volvo's been consistently safe for 25 years.
right
or longer.
Well,
and to piggyback off what both of you guys said, the other thing too is that the government regulates that we put more into the cars than ever before, standard like rear backup cameras, etc.
Totally.
And that also has a price. So the cost to build a car has gone up considerably from what it used to be.
Yeah.
And a base model car now does anything you could have imagined that a high premium car would have done 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
So
some of that is based
it's
on
kind of justified.
Yeah, so some of the higher cost is based on something that they're being forced to do, like backup cameras and that kind of safety technology, and that's not going to stop.
No.
But then the other of it is, I mean, I worked in that industry for a while, and I would talk to these people and go, how the hell are we at a point where we're spending at that time $60,000 for a new truck?
Yeah.
Now there's 70. And the reason is because they get a lot of feedback. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many people big OEM companies have that do research on what people think about their cars, other people's cars, everybody's cars, and they consistently get the people that have a fair amount of money, or at least are in the upper middle class, and they say they want more.
Yeah.
They buy the most expensive one, and they say, look, I wish it had this. I wish it had that. I wish it was a dual panoramic moonroof and not a single pane. I mean,
Right.
You'd be surprised at how many people provide that feedback.
Right.
And they would say, literally, I would buy it if you would have it. If it was an option, I would buy it.
Kind of a build it and they will come type scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you get enough of those, that's when they come out with that kind of stuff.
All right, let me get to one of Nick's last questions. What's better, supercharged or turbocharged?
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask, and I think it depends on the application.
Absolutely. I was going to say that.
I don't think there's much of a case, as my very limited, very small brain knows about physics, I don't think that there's a case that superchargers are more efficient because turbochargers do not cause engine drag. They do not cause powertrain loss. Whereas
Right.
a supercharger,
You rob
if you
power to
don't
make
know,
power.
you have to take power from the rotation of the engine to drive the supercharger. So superchargers are always, from what I know, less efficient. However, if you're just asking me my personal opinion, ProCharge stuff is cool. Like,
Yeah.
twin screw supercharged stuff is cool. Centrifugal superchargers are cool. So,
Yes. So my opinion on that goes strictly from the guys that try to make that make stupid amounts of horsepower and go a quarter mile in 3 seconds. They don't use turbos.
right.
So there's got to be a reason for that.
Turbo
I don't-
lag.
I don't know.
Turbo lag.
Well, that and maybe other things, but
Sure.
drag racing, NHRA, all of those guys use superchargers for the most part.
Yeah, you're like your top fuel,
Top
and
fuel, funny car, pro stock, it's almost all supercharged. So
Yeah.
whenever,
I think in Pro Mod there's a lot of turbos.
yeah,
But I don't know I don't know. Sorry.
and whichever one is more efficient, there could be a case for both. Like whenever you spool up a turbocharger, it makes power just like a supercharger does, but a supercharger has to raw power to make power, like what Jake said. So you have advantages and disadvantages to both. Just depends on the application, what you're using it for, and everything else. If you're going to supercharge a 6-cylinder, don't supercharge an 8-cylinder because it's going to rob too much to spin the engine and make power that's efficient for it.
Yeah.
Turbocharge it like what they're all doing now with these small 1.4 liter 4-cylinder, 1.3 liter EcoBoost engines, 2.7 EcoBoost engines.
Yeah.
Turbocharge those.
Mm-hmm.
Hellcat is supercharged. Just depends on the application who you ask.
And what other people don't realize, or maybe they do, is that either way you're still sacrificing fuel economy or efficiency because the whole goal of either one is to inject more air into the engine, and then that gets combined with more fuel. So either way, you're going to be less efficient.
Yeah.
Anyway, inherently, either way you do it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, are you using engine power to make more power, or are you using engine exhaust to make more power?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
Either way, you're trying to make bigger boom.
right, where I'm at on it is, if you want to do a supercharger and go that route, you do 8-cylinder and that's it. If you want to do 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 10-cylinder, turbo. How many twin turbo Huracan Vipers are out there that are just wicked?
Making
I mean,
2,500 plus
Yeah.
horsepower.
And how many supercharged Vipers do you see? I don't know that I've
I've heard of a couple.
maybe heard
but-
of a few.
I've heard of a few, but it's just strictly from like work. I've never actually seen one in person.
Yeah, you just don't see that very often.
And I would just say in terms of, again, we're not physics experts. So if we're getting all this wrong, I mean, you should probably already know this is not the show for people that care about math. I would say if you look
Or
at
logic,
or
sometimes.
logic, or even just getting shit right.
Yeah, because we're a little biased. We're usually wrong.
And we don't do that much homework, and we're not going to change.
Yeah.
I would almost say, because you make a really good point about the top fuel cars, the funny cars, and we truthfully don't know why it is that they use superchargers because, again, from our limited knowledge, turbochargers are just more efficient at making power because they don't require power to make power, right? So you look at the top street cars, like you brought up the underground racing, the Huracans, and before that, the Gallardos. And then you look at all the Alpha Omega GTRs, the 3,000 horsepower. I mean, they're all turbo cars, all the fastest cars in the world for the most part. If you talk about half mile, if you talk about street racing, Texas 2K, they're all running highly advanced, large turbo systems. So that's probably way more information than he wanted. So let's get back to Travis's question. Old school muscle cars, pick your camp, pick your loyalty right here on the show. Going back to the 70s, going back to the 60s, who are you buying?
All right, I got it. Joey, you got one?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because it's been my favorite car since I was a little kid, I'm going with the 1969 Dodge Charger.
Okay.
That is my car. It will always be my car.
Why?
Because that show, whenever I was growing up, it's the Dukes of Hazzard. We have already shouted it out once on the show, but something about that show and that orange car outrunning the law all the time made me fall in love with the car.
Yeah.
I know that it was slow. I know it was on dirt. I know it didn't make any sense, and the show just had a lot of good home values that we're missing today, and that's why I love the show. Sorry. And then
He knows better than anyone not to bang on the table, but you get him talking about Dukes of Hazzard, and that's okay. It happens.
It gets me revved up a little bit.
It's all right.
And then it's just the looks and the style, the boldness of the 69 Dodge Charger. It's a one-of-a-kind car, and it will never be replicated.
It's true.
I absolutely love everything about that car. There's not one thing that I could pick apart. I don't care if it's a 68, 69, or 1970.
How would you spec it?
So if we're just going to go 1969 Dodge Charger, I would want some form of a Gen 3 Hemi in it. So 2008 or newer Hemi, so some form of one of those.
No, I'm saying I'm going to argue that he wants to know factory original. How you doing this?
Well, you got to go with a 440.
Well, no, you could get a 426 Hemi in those.
Yeah, but
Really, you're not a fan of the 426 Hemi, Mister? I own all the Hemis.
Yeah, you have like what, three of them now?
but you're not gonna get.
You're just tired
You're not
of
gonna
them?
get an original Hemi Charger to drive.
We're talking hypotheticals.
Yeah,
All right.
I would drive it all the
All right,
time.
a 426, but it has to be a 4-speed.
Well, yeah, there's no other way to get
There
one.
you go. We're done. And
Those are big
I would have
cars.
the exact same thing as you, only mine would be black.
Yep.
There you go. Or a Hemi Cuda. I could do a
Ooh.
Hemi Cuda with a 426 and a 4-speed.
Would it be a convertible or hardtop?
Oh, I'd have to go hardtop.
Hardtop.
Yep.
Yeah, there's very few vehicles on Earth that should be convertibles.
Black with those chrome capped wheels.
Yeah.
They're black wheels, but they're chrome
The
capped.
rally wheels.
I think they're well.
Those are the rally wheels.
Are they the rally wheels?
15-inch with the chrome caps on them. Those are the
Could
rally
be.
wheels.
Black wheels with the satin black stripes.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
it.
I think
Something like that.
My 69, it would shock you guys. I wouldn't paint it orange if we're talking something I drive all the time because I don't want anybody to key my fucking car. So,
And
Well,
that
in a-
would happen.
In
Yeah.
a hypothetical world, that wouldn't happen.
If we're buying in the 70s, that
so-
definitely wouldn't happen because nobody cares.
Yeah. So if we're talking 1970s, we're doing straight General Lee.
Okay.
That's
That's what
the
I figured
car.
you were
Yeah.
going to do. That's why I didn't mind saying that mine would be black because it'd be different than yours.
Well, now I think it's complete bullshit, though, that I would have to worry about that.
Don't.
Like, taking it to a car show, somebody getting offended by it. Like, really?
Yeah, it happens. It's a real thing.
It's
That's why you
irritating,
don't
though.
take it to a car show.
Yeah, that's right. I would have to say again. I brush up on my muscle car knowledge because it's compared to you two, it's nothing. But I would almost say, I mean, Hemi Cuda, Hemi Chargers. If I had to pick one, probably if we're living in this hypothetical world where we're back in the 70s and we get to pick cool stuff out.
Yeah.
I would almost just say Hemi Cuda just because. I mean, they were wild. I think if I remember right, you could get the Hemi back then it wasn't even vinyl. I don't think. I think it was painted on. You could get the big Hemi wording on the side. Was that a thing, or am I imagining?
Yeah, it was vinyl.
It was a vinyl.
Vinyl.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was vinyl, yeah.
And I would get the loudest color they offered. I would get the 4-speed 426 Hemi in green or
Go
purple,
Sublime
Mango
green
orange
or
or
something.
orange. It would be a Skittle.
Sublime.
It would be a 4,000-pound Skittle.
I do have to say a close
I like the
second, if we're talking hypothetical, would be a 1970 Plymouth Superbird.
I almost said Superbird,
I was waiting for you to say
some sort
Richard
of-
Petty's Superbird.
Well, yeah, you'd
I'm
have to go
also
that way.
shocked that you did not say Bandit Trans Am
Well,
because I could see the case for that too. I
it's
want
so-
one of them.
between
I want them too.
those two cars, I don't know what it is about them or why I love them so much, but the 69 Charger, 77 Trans Am, if both of those cars were parked in a hypothetical garage that I owned, I wouldn't need anything else. That'd
and
be
then
it.
I think second is a 70 Chevelle 454 SS. in
LS6
black.
car, yeah.
LS6 car, black with white stripes.
M22 Rock Crusher transmission.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All the things.
Yep.
I love this
But
conversation.
You
Yep.
do have to spec them the right way. I would
Yeah.
love a Bandit Trans Am, but I would not have that 6.6 with the automatic.
No.
See, that's
I'd
why.
have to have a 4-speed.
Well, yeah.
Or a 5-speed. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
A newer 5-speed Tremec or the old 4-speed.
If we're talking old OEM, it would have been a 4-speed. 6.6 with a 4-speed would have been fun.
Yeah.
I've driven one of those.
Yeah, you
It's-
gotta
it's
have
fun.
that. You gotta have that.
Yeah, I think if we're talking if you're talking Bandit Trans Am, I think to me the ultimate muscle car that's ever been and ever will be for me personally is Vin Diesel's. And I know it's a theoretical car because I don't even know that there were any of those that actually did what they looked like they did. But it would be his black 69 or 70 Charger, whatever it was,
That
with
big
the
ass blower
with
sticking
the
out
blower
of the hood.
sticking
With
out
the
of the
big
hood,
blower.
the BDS blower on American Racing torque wheels. Like that's it.
Yeah.
That's the muscle car. That's it forever and always for me. I don't care nothing else, nothing
Yeah.
ever. I mean, I would almost take that car over most exotics.
You know what's
still.
amazing is even in the old markets, we're all hung up on Mopar shit. It's because it's like everybody's dream car. I don't know. It seems like it is anyways. I don't want to say it's everybody's, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They just have a knack or a way of making things that are legendary.
Which is weird because we all love the late 60s Camaros. Like, that's like one of the most
And
iconic
I
muscle
love
cars of all time.
And I love the old Chevelles too.
I wouldn't buy one over a Mopar, though.
No,
And-
or the 67 Stingray Corvette. Oh yeah, that would be.
Or an
Yeah.
Eleanor GT500.
Yeah,
See, I don't.
See, I love that.
yeah, I do too.
It'd be
I love
like
them, but I
fifth or
wouldn't-
sixth on the list. But
See,
Well, here's the
which is
problem.
a lot
Also,
for me to say
I've
for a
seen
Ford.
too many of them. I think
Yeah.
for me, I'm kind of like at this point when I see an Eleanor 10 years ago, I was like, oh my God, and I melted. Now I'm like, that's really cool. It's like the 30 or 40th one that
Yeah.
I've seen. Like,
what I really
I
like.
think you hit it. Sorry, Eric. I think you
go
hit
ahead.
it though right there because Mopar have always been really the lowest sales volume of any of the big three.
yeah.
So they're more rare. You don't see them as much.
It's when you do, you appreciate
Maybe
it
nowadays. Maybe nowadays you do. Everybody. You see a lot of Chargers and Challengers nowadays.
more. Yeah,
But when you go back, think of just how many options there were. I mean, GM had Oldsmobile, Buick,
Yeah.
Pontiac, Chevy, Cadillac. I mean, not really from a sports car,
from a
era.
big freaking engine standpoint, though.
But
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then and Ford, you
Like-
had the Mustang and then you had the
You had the-
Cougar, the Cougar.
The
But I mean, you had a Mustang.
Cougar, you had the.
Everybody had a Mustang.
Yeah.
And even now, a lot of people have Mustangs. So that's why when you see them, you just go,
Yeah.
eh.
What's
I mean, they're
kinda-
still cool,
What's
but
one of the most underrated muscle cars, in my opinion, is actually a Ford. It's a 429
Cobra Jet.
Cyclone.
It's
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
You could get the 429 Cobra Jet motor
Yeah.
in a little bit larger car, but it's what they raced in NASCAR. And now they're dirty freaking cheap. They're like $15,000 for one versus any form of a fast Mustang that would be 20, 30, 40 and up.
I would almost say, just like watching the market over the years very like casually from a
Yeah.
distance, it seems like basically with collector cars, it's if it was cool at one point, buy it and it'll be cool again eventually. Maybe 40 years from now.
Yeah.
But it just seems like anything that was cool once will be cool again. I guarantee you in 10, 15 years, we're going to see $30,000, $40,000 SRT10 Viper Rams, which is just like right now you would never think.
yeah.
Well, they're not that far off right now for a nice one.
If you haven't,
Yeah,
it's
that's
going to
true.
be one of those where if you kept yours in good shape with low miles,
Yeah.
it'll be worth it.
Well, it's like the GNX guys from back in the 80s that kept their cars really nice.
Yeah.
The Darth Vader cars, those things are $100,000 cars now. Who in their right mind would have thought a G-body car would be that expensive to buy now?
Yeah, S5. I mean, back when we were growing up, when we all first got our driver's license back 2006, 2007,
Yeah.
you couldn't give away a Fox Body Mustang. Now they're not there yet, and we talk about them a lot, but they're
Yeah.
starting to they're getting there. We're seeing, and
They have a market presence for sure.
the other one is the late 80s Camaros.
Yeah.
You couldn't give away a 1989 Camaro back when I was growing up.
It was a
Now,
boat anchor.
if you, like you said, if you've got the mint one, it's like, okay, this is worth something. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think it's starting to reach that point where they're going away. Because they're done making them, obviously, and it comes down to that point of it reaches that demand. It goes back up. The demand goes back up because
Yeah.
people that have always wanted one realize that oh shit, they don't make them anymore, and
Yeah.
the good ones are either going to remain good but go up in price, and the bad ones or good or decent ones are going to just go to shit. Plus, people wreck them.
Yeah, exactly.
Something happens to them, and you start losing them, just like muscle cars are now. They're only going up in general.
Well, and some cars, once cars hit a certain point with market values like the Camaros, the Corvettes, the Trans Ams of old and everything like that, they kind of stay there for a long time. Like, you would see the old hot rod builds and stuff like that. They used to be really, really expensive cars to buy, and they still are to an extent, but they're not as predominant in the market as what they used to be.
It's true.
And as we keep going forward, we're going to start to see that and I hate saying this because it hurts my soul, but the Bel Airs and the cars of the 50s and the early 60s that everybody loved are going to start going down in price because the people that want them or loved them are literally starting to pass away. Kind of like what is happening and has happened with the Model T, the Model A. It's just going to keep going down that front. And and eventually it's going to carry over to where, especially like in the truck market, you can't buy what used to be a cheap truck. A 67 to a 72 Chevy was a cheap truck. Now it's not a cheap truck. The square body was a cheap truck. Now it's not a cheap truck. The OBS trucks are cheap trucks, and they're getting to be not cheap trucks.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep moving forward.
I would real quick before we get too much further, I would like to take a second and like genuinely thank Greg, Nick, and Travis for throwing us some questions. And Travis, we will get you on the show.
100%. And last week, I also want to mention Kelsey Stevens again because she posted another comment again, and her comment last week was based on the fact that I guess she was trying to post while we were doing the live feed and thought that it was on a time limit or something.
Oh.
And she apologized, and that's absolutely no problem. Like, if you want to comment or whatever, just do what you need to do, and we will make sure that we answer it to the best of our abilities.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's going to be a great deal. We're going to DM her this week and get stuff going with her too. So her comment was awesome, like after the fact. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Well, thank you everyone for giving us your questions. That was, and that's the whole thing is like, we want the show to be as entertaining as humanly possible. And let's be real, having cool people that know stuff about cars like Greg, Nick, Travis throw us questions, and Haley, what's her name?
Haley Deegan. What are you talking about?
No, the person you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Kelsey.
Sorry, I had two people we talked about.
Okay.
Having people like Kelsey and Nick and Travis and Greg, sometimes Greg, throw us questions. It's just going to make the show way more fun.
Well, yeah,
so thank you everyone for throwing us some stuff and giving us.
We still got one from last week we didn't hit. If you want to do it.
Oh, let's do it.
So JB Matthews, our good buddy, said for $10,000, what vehicle would you buy and what engine would you swap in it for a fast, fun, don't give a shit car?
Oh,
man, that's tough.
That's at this point, I'm going to be a complete hypocrite. I think you've got two options as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
All right.
One, early GTO, LS1 GTO. For 10 grand, you can get a decent one. It's not that fast. They're still kind of heavy, but it's an LS platform. You can get a 6-speed with it's a T56. It's an LS. What else do you want? Those are all day long, 8 to 10 grand. Second option, a higher mileage early SRT8 Charger or SRT8 300C. You're starting out with however
10 grand.
You can get. It's not going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be high mileage.
It's not going to be great. But if we're talking 10 grand for a performance car, it's probably going to be rough no matter what.
You get a 6.1. I would even venture to say you could get a 5.7 way more. You could find way more 5.7 Chargers than you could 6.1 SRTs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could just pro charge it, and you'd be all right.
Yeah.
I got one that's going to shock you what these things go for. So I was thinking about this on my way over here, and I'm going to go with the Magnum SRT8.
Okay.
But for 10 grand?
For 10 grand.
We're talking a
get it for
rough
10
one.
grand?
We're talking a rough one, I'm sure. Because
you just get the wheels.
I saw one
For 10 grand?
I saw one today with a clean title Magnum SRT8. It was like the last year they did one.
Yeah.
And had 80,000 miles in it for about 20 grand. So I'm sure if you're dead set on that car, you could do it.
You could find one if you look hard enough. You could find one.
And if you're
Magnum
cool with being
SRT8
the
for about 10 grand.
seventh owner, but still.
Yeah, I don't know, but you
If
can
you're
find
talking-
SRT8s that cheap.
But I'm biased, see, because having owned, or another option would be a Cobalt SS. Those are all day. For
100%. Only the turbo though. Only the
turbo.
turbo version.
Okay.
I know.
It's
That
fine.
makes two of us that think that.
Or Caliber.
There's no reason to ever buy a Cobalt.
Caliber SRT4 is another good one.
Any of them.
Here's the thing: for 10 grand,
Okay,
the default,
okay.
the default for 10 grand, if you're a muscle guy or if you're anything like us, is an F body. That's the default because you can get an F body. You can get the nicest F body in the world, probably a built one, for 10 grand.
For 10 grand.
But
That's
having
always
owned
the
one,
thing.
maybe if it's a weekend only car, but having owned one,
For a fun car though.
Or a C5, you could get a C5.
See, a
C5 would
now
be
you're starting
nice.
to get better.
We're not picking anything that's helpful at all.
No, we're not.
But I'm going to stick with my early answer. I think you can get a decent LS1 GTO. You're starting from a good place. If you want to, you can cam it for $1. You can throw long tubes
for $1.
You can throw long tubes and heads, and
it's got demon options now.
You're $350, right? You're three. Okay, so let's say you pick it up for. Let's say you pick up a decent one for $8. You do some negotiating.
Okay.
You pour $2 grand into a tune, long tubes, and a catback. You're making $4-ish at the crank.
Yeah. So dirty cheap car, C4 Corvette.
Oof.
And you pull the complete, you gut the drivetrain completely, LS, whatever, swap it that you want to do, and you have an amazing chassis for a
4.8
car.
truck motor with a turbo.
Yeah. You have an amazing chassis for a car if you want to do autocross or anything like that.
I think the problem with the C4 isn't the powertrain; it's the interior. That's the hiccup most of the time.
But I'm just
Fine.
assuming, based on the question, that we're talking about a car that you spend max 4 hours in the driver's
We're
seat.
talking
every other
about just a
week.
strict fun car, not something
that
that you would
case,
drive
You
regularly.
gotta have a V8.
Yeah.
No Cobalt SS or Caliber SRT.
I'm just throwing options out there because not everyone,
Not everyone is on
Wants
that
it,
same
so
page.
you know.
Like a fun car for under
That's
10
true.
grand too that you can do almost anything to is a Miata. And not a whole lot of people think about that.
That is a great way to spend your last 10 grand because when you drive that thing, you're gonna die.
No,
yeah,
for
that's
real,
a great
one-
answer. It's a great answer. You
So-
can do a Miata, and then if you throw
And then
$5
LS
grand,
swap it.
$5 in wheels and tires, or not wheels and tires, and suspension and tires on that thing, and
Yeah.
you've got something that'll stick like a booger and stop like a post-war economy. I read that in a magazine once. I've never forgotten it.
Oh
Okay.
my god, that's like that comeback joke that we can't say on the air because everybody will turn the
Not
show
on,
off.
not the 2019 Blown Smoke podcast is not the 2017 Blown Smoke podcast.
No,
don't
we
say
can't.
things like that on the
No,
air
we
anymore.
can't do that anymore. But
Yeah.
No,
So
damn it.
the guy that I worked, Chris, the guy that I worked with out with the Gateway, he had a Miata that he did a whole bunch of work to, and that thing was just bad fast. I mean, it was a cool car.
It's
like,
tough to wrap my head around it, but I could see it.
yeah, for the money, if you're talking,
For the money, now you're talking less than 10 grand.
well, yeah, that's the beauty of it. You can do a bunch of stuff to those cars.
I bet you could do it for 5.
Yeah.
See, now I
You
see the
can-
proposition.
You can also build the motor. I did not know this, but you can actually build the motors too. And he had a head swap that he was going to do to an engine that he had, and it was going to bump it up to like 220, 230 horse at the crank. And I was like, Jesus, I didn't know that could happen. Like,
Yeah.
it's a Miata. They make like 140 horsepower from the factory.
And who asked that question?
JB Matthews.
Okay, Jamie, thank you for that. And what's nice about that question, because
It's like an endless question.
well, it is, but here's the thing: it simplifies things because when you hear it all the time. For 15 grand, what would you get if you had to daily drive it and take it to the racetrack? For 20 grand, if you had to
Yeah.
drag race it on the weekends and daily it. But when you simplify it, I keep hitting this. When
Yeah.
you simplify it and it's just this purpose,
Fun, yeah.
it becomes, no matter what it is, whether it's a commuter, whether it's a race car, whether it's a this or that, the answer becomes much clearer because hell no, I would not tell you to go spend 10 grand on an early LS1 GTO if you had to drive it every. No,
That
no.
wouldn't be a thing.
But
no.
if you get to spend 2 hours in it on a Friday night every other weekend, then who cares if the leather seats are coming apart or if the paint's
exactly.
faded?
If it's a fuck it car, then yeah.
Nobody cares. Right. And actually, believe it or not, with that, we are actually right at an hour.
Wow.
Time
Okay.
flies, right?
When you're having that much fun, yeah.
When you're having
I
fun.
love this new question thing. It is fun.
It is. And all we have to do is look dumb on Facebook for
Yeah.
30 seconds. So every weekend, you will, if you follow the page on Facebook, which is just the Blown Smoke Podcast, you will get a notification until you turn them off because we're annoying.
Yes.
And we will ask for questions, shout outs. And again, we're not that smart. So if you want us to just talk crap to people for you, like Greg, love you, Greg, we will do that for you. And for now, send them to us. We'll take them all. We'll do them all. Every
Yeah.
episode, even if it's just an hour of Q&A, we'll do it. And we'll probably have to change that policy later on because I can see people abusing it.
Yes.
Greg.
Greg.
Every 30 seconds. Hey, what about this? What about this? What about that? No, shut up.
Yeah, we all just like
Hush.
turn our phones off halfway through. Anything major to get to for you guys? I don't want to shut the episode down if we have.
I don't have anything else to talk about.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
This has been episode 114 of the Blown Smoke Podcast. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, I post, to be honest, I always kind of downplay it. I post pictures of the shows and events that I travel to. I'm very fortunate in that I get to go all over the country every year, going to these really awesome shows. So I post from shows, I post cars, I post my own nonsense,
Yeah.
mostly cat pictures. So I'm Big Fast Jake on Instagram. Joe, do you want people to follow you this week or no? You go back and forth.
This week, sure.
This week, sure.
This week's good.
What's your handle?
So 6 Speed Joe, the number 6 Speed Joe.
And if you are a Mopar person or you've toyed with the idea of being a Mopar person, he's the one to follow.
If you're a Mopar guru, you got to follow that page.
Have to.
Seriously, because it's just
That's all I post.
the shit that you come up with sometimes. I'm just like, wow.
Yes. Eric,
So, again, this was episode 114 of the Blown Smoke Podcast. We can't thank y'all enough for listening, sending in questions, comments, telling us to give your friends shit or not. We're just having way too much fun doing this, so keep it up, guys, and keep telling people about the show. Leave us a review if you would be ever so kind, and don't forget to Follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and we'll catch y'all next week for episode 115.
And who are you on Instagram?
I am the captain of cars on Instagram.
Follow him. All the old cars ever and OBS Chevys.
OBS Chevys mostly
Yes.
now, yes.
Okay, bye.
Bikes.